Owl MVP voting is my favorite time of the year. It brings out the worst and stupidest parts in people and makes me feel better about myself. We may not agree on all of these candidates, but like it or not, they're here, and all that matters now is who you as an individual vote for. I do not trust Owl to make the right decision, so I am cashing my vote into the bank, and I advise you do the same. So I'm going to rank these MVP candidates from least to most valid, and as I explain my reasoning, what I define as the MVP will make itself clear, so don't worry about it. But just know the MVP is not just the best player. That is lame and boring. Let's start with the few truly invalid picks. Merit, Violet, and Zest. None of these guys are even the MVP of their respective teams, and as such have no business being anyone's league-wide MVP. Number 10 is Merit. He's been great in these summer qualifiers, being one of the best hit scans in the league and making high impact, aggressive plays that change the direction a fight is going entirely. His high risk, high reward playstyle usually works out in his favor, and he has been a core reason for Florida's recent dominance. However, there are times where he will fumble fights harder than Yaki fumbled his career. Then there's also the matter of what happens when he isn't on Hitscan or Hanzo, which is what he mostly played during the most important matches of the year in the midseason madness. While his Sombra stands atop a mountain of average like Birdring, Shy, or well, that's really it, he's at minimum one tier below Happy and multiple below Lip. He also played a lot of Reaper in that tournament, but no one cares because it just wasn't notable. Number 9 is Zest, who has just been the high schooler held back 5 grades, beating down 10-year-olds on the playground all stage. Like, yeah, maybe he is the best player in APAC right now, but how much is that really worth? I do not care, even if he's making 6 figures shaking down kids for their lunch money. In the spring stage, his Tracer was good statistically, but not exceptional even compared to the rest of the East, and only average if you compare it to the league as a whole. These are nowhere near MVP level stats, and although they don't mean everything, having average stats while being in the preschool division is not acceptable for the most valuable player. He's kicked it into high gear now, but with how competitive this race is, there is no room for a slow start. Number 8, Violet, has been one of the best, most flexible main support players in the league. His great Kiriko allows Houston to play comps that differentiate themselves from the competition and gives them an edge up on a significant amount of teams. On top of that, he plays a very smart Brig and hits whip shots like if he misses, Hoshizora will unload a full scientific paper on every toxic interaction he's ever had in his entire life. He's a crucial part to Houston's success and a top 3 main support at minimum, but he just cannot be MVP with Shu standing right there. He can be nominated, that's fine, but he should not be voted for by any stretch of the imagination. I do not care how long he's been good or how he switched up roles or whatever other legacy he has. Shu isn't landing sleep darts that go into a 2012 trick shot montage every single map to lose out to the guy beside him holding shield. If any main support had an outside shot at MVP, it was Chio, but unfortunately he is in Cancun. Next up are the players who have a difficult but not impossible argument for MVP: Fearless, Shu, and Skewed. In a league with elite flex supports everywhere, number 7 Skewed set himself apart by terrorizing APAC to the point of being the undisputed best support in the region on not just Ana, but also BAP and Zen. Someone is being jerked off for being a hyperflex, and yes, his tank flexibility is more impressive than Skewed playing 3 heroes he should know how to play, but would somebody please give him a hand? And I don't care as much that he's in the weaker region, because that gets priced in when you look to his right and see Fixa trying to do advanced calculus mid-fight for no reason. Bro does not have Violet or Chio to hold his hand. He's out here doing it by himself. The problems with Skewed as an MVP is that the Infernal disintegrated during their one chance to prove themselves as a real team this year. Plus, his impressive showings on a variety of heroes doesn't make up the difference in impact that Shu or Fielder has on Ana alone. Number 6, Fearless has been the best Winston in a Winston meta, so it makes sense for him to be in consideration for MVP. His overall dominance of the hero has has been key to Houston being a top dog all year. He's also turned up on the Ramattra, making the already fraudulent claim that he's a one trick even more delusional. The reason he's not with the other big boys on this list is because the tank gap, while noticeable, wasn't actually impactful enough to get them over the hump. Houston's largest and arguably only player skill gap against Atlanta was Fearless, but at the end of the day, in the midseason tournament, Donghak actually played better in the head-to-head and tournament as a whole. The most valuable player in the league can't fuck off and run it down like he's tilt queuing at 3 a.m. on the East Coast ladder, especially when his team needs him most. At number 5, Shu has been the backbone of the Outlaws all year, and he's the only support player in the league with enough impressive clips for a full-length montage every week. He opens up the game in ways that other players can only dream about. Shu will hide in some abstract part of the map for 15 minutes, waiting for some poor soul to turn the corner and get jump scared by war crimes that rival Canada's in the First World War. Shu's aggressive playstyle is unmatched and defines how Houston plays the game. However, this doesn't make him the MVP or even the best flex support in the league right now. As a result of Shu's aggressive playstyle, he dies far more often than other top supports, and while basic stats cannot measure how much impact on a fight he has, dying less is better, especially this season. With fellow MVP nominee Fielder kind of outclassing him on the Ana this year, it's hard to rationalize Shu as the most valuable player, but I'll have more on that very shortly. Admittedly, Shu falls somewhere in between this group and the final 4, but I'm not giving him his own category, so whatever. Finally, we've reached the players that have genuinely strong arguments to be the most valuable player, and all need to be deeply considered before making a choice. Fielder, Lip, Someone, and Stalker. If you've made it this far into the video and you're not subscribed, why? Just subscribe. I get a bigger number, you get more Overwatch League content in your feed. It's a win-win. Anyway, number 4 is Stalker. He's been the best tracer all season and putting up better raw numbers than Proper's historic MVP performance last year. He deadlifted multiple maps against the best of the best in the midseason madness and clutched it up when it mattered most. His Mei and Echo have also been fantastic when he's been allowed to whip them out. There isn't anything fancy to say about Stalker's gameplay. He has simply been the best mechanical player across the year and somehow found another gear in the most important matches. The main knock on Stalker's campaign is that he doesn't define Atlanta's game plan at all. Of course, it's nice to have someone who looks like a top 500 smurf in a plat lobby on your side, but unlike everyone above him, he doesn't really bring anything unique to the table. If you value raw, mechanical, individual skill above all else, Stalker should be your MVP. But he is not mine. At number 3, we have Fielder, and it's clear that his reserved textbook playstyle, along with his synergy and dependability, has reigned supreme this season. Somehow he always lands a nade directly on top of Lip's EMPs without compromising his position in any way whatsoever. But the most interesting part of Fielder's game is how much healing he outputs while on a top team that's dominated the competition every step of the way. Traditionally, flex supports are only able to heal this much when their team is doing significantly less damage than the opposition. But in Fielder's case, he has to pocket Donghak while he ints in like Season 1 OGE. A large portion of Donghak's competence is attributed to the sheer amount of steroids being pumped into him through his own personal IV drip. Fielder has done this in the past. We've seen it with Fearless before, but instead of turning his tank into a super soldier, he's just made him usable, which is more than enough for Atlanta. Fielder has been the most consistent player at the top end of this MVP ballot and has been practically pulling the weight of 2 players all season. Nobody else in the league has the ability to elevate his teammates like Fielder, and he is truly worthy of a top 3 MVP finish. And now we come down to the final showdown: Someone versus Lip. The hottest debate in Overwatch right now, or at least top 2 after the current Mercy debate of the week. Lip has been the early MVP frontrunner since the very beginning of the season. He's been a huge, if not the only reason, why Sombra grew to have a massive meta presence in the first place. If you're looking for someone to be upset at that you're being perma-hacked in your ranked queues, look no further. We found the culprit. He was ruining, dismantling, and downright bullying teams like they were a plat friend group just just looking to have some fun in open division. He was so far ahead of the next best Sombra, it was hopeless. It didn't matter if you matched the Sombra, if you avoid the mirror, teams could do nothing but watch as Lip directed their funeral. People who flame his flexibility seem to forget that Sombra was the ideal pick in 85% of situations. Teams like Houston got flexible in order to try and gain an edge where Sombra wasn't the 100% best pick available, but Lip has been so good at her, he has no need for those frivolous strategies. He's shaped the meta in a way we haven't seen since JJoNak came onto the scene in season 1. With that said, there are some valid points of dispute. While he was still the best Sombra in the midseason madness, he wasn't as dominant as usual and was outdone by Stalker, Fielder, and Chio at minimum. And now in the summer qualifiers, with Sombra slightly falling off, he's been noticeably less of a lobby admin. And the biggest problem with Lip as the MVP is that the boon of his argument, what he rides on the most, is impossible to prove. We cannot know what the league looks like without Lip's existence. There is a real possibility that Changoon or Neko would wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night and discover the truth of the universe. They learn that Sombra is a disgusting, broken rodent, and they use their knowledge for evil. With that said, if you value not only being team defining, but league defining, then Lip has to be your MVP. Moving over to someone, he has been truly irreplaceable. No one else in the league comes close to the level of flexibility he's displayed, maybe ever. He has been at least top 3 at every relevant tank this year, allowing Florida to run a multitude of comps that best fit the situation in front of them and their team preferences. When people think about what meta fits a player the best, they think about what heroes they might excel on. But for someone, it's about how many different compositions can be used within a map to counterpick what the enemy is running. This is what sets someone apart. He's operating on a different mindset from everyone else. Without someone, Florida fundamentally would not be able to operate the way they do. Even if Lip wasn't on Atlanta, Gator could still put little Timmy on the Sombra, but there is simply no one else capable of what someone brings to the table. He doesn't just change what compositions they can play, he changes how they play them as well. His aggression leads the Mayhem to spawn camp if given even the slightest opportunity, and they will hold up well beyond where most teams are willing to go just to completely control the tempo and essentially suffocate their opposition. The Someone campaign took a minute to get backers because at the beginning of this season, his Ramattra was actually one of his weaker tanks, and Florida was sometimes guilty of overcooking with his swaps. There were times where if Florida had just taken their normal pills, they'd possibly have found even more success perchance. Regardless, the value someone provides is undeniable, and no one is as valuable to their team as he is. In the end, I believe that Lip is in fact the most influential Overwatch player in the last half decade. It might be the lame choice, but he's created such a large canyon between him and everyone else in his role in every way possible. The mechanics, the game knowledge, the team synergy, the mental warfare. Lip is just light years ahead of everyone else on the hero he's needed to play, and he's forced everyone else to play it with him.